Ashokji, why don't you start with how to love God and then read for a bit?
Yes. Avatar
Yeah, God.
Meher Baba, Jai Baba, Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. How to love God. To love God in the most practical way is to love our fellow beings. If we feel for others in the same way as we feel for our dear ones, we love God. 1. If instead of seeing faults in others, we look up within ourselves, we are loving God. 2. If instead of robbing others to help ourselves, we rob ourselves to help others, we are loving God. 3. If we suffer in the suffering of others and feel happy in the happiness of others, we are loving God. 4. If instead of worrying over our own misfortunes, we think of ourselves more fortunate than many, many others, we are loving God. 5th, if we endure our lot with patience and contentment, accepting it as His will, we are loving God. 6. If we understand and feel that the greatest act of devotion and worship to God is not to harm or hurt any of His beings, we are loving God. 7. To love God as He ought to be loved, we must live for God and die for God, knowing that the goal of life is to love God and find Himself as our own self. By Meher Baba.
Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. Thank you. So, as we were discussing just before we started recording, we are down to the last of the five favorites, and that is Chacha. And let's start with Chacha. I'm actually a little below the weather. I was running a temperature last night, so if possible, I'd like to avoid reading. So maybe Ashokji, why don't you start, given you had everything going for a
Oh,
bit, and then maybe I'll also read for
okay.
10-15 minutes if I feel better. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jai
No
Baba.
issues. Meher Baba ki Jai Baba. Fifth, Chacha, Noor Ali Shah Pathan. Thou whose exterior semblance doth belie thy soul's immensity. William Wordsworth, 1770 to 1850. Meher Baba has explained that besides kutubs, there are all there are in of the seventh plane, two mazubs and one Jivan Mukta, and Chacha is one of these great mazubs. It is certainly an irony that one drowned in God should have to remain essentially a puzzle to us. But as one tries to understand this old Pathan, one's thoughts are stirred by the vision of a quest to capture the grail of limitless bliss, buried in the depths of Chacha's soiled and battered body. One's intellects may revolve, but the whisper of an intuition echoes along the corridor of one's mind that Chacha is, in very truth, treading the splendid heights while we continue to grope along the misty valleys of our rigid habits of thought. To one familiar with Sufi or Vedantic to Christian mystics, the existence of such souls is taken almost for granted. But to one not versed in these teachings, the problem bristles with difficulties. To such, I can only suggest that he should read again Baba's exposition in chapter 1, which makes it clear why a soul such as Chacha, merged in God, is utterly indifferent to his worldly environment. Now, India and Pakistan, that's the footnote.
So there were
Need to
two
start.
Matsubs and one Jivan Mukta at that time. So the first line talks about all India, that is India and Pakistan together, uh, there were three men in the seventh plane, two were Majzoobs, and one Jivan Mukta. By the way, I realized on YouTube how this word is pronounced. In Hindi, it's written as Majzoob. So it's Majzoob. So there is a j sound and a z sound as two different words. I mean, two different letters. So Majzoob. Yeah, go ahead. Next paragraph.
Chacha is one of the Mazzoobs. Uh,
In that sense, he's not a must. Just for clarity, right? Majzoob is not a must, but then we'll find out more. Maybe there's more we find out when we read this. Obviously, if he's included in this list of five, there's a reason for it. But
yeah,
a Majzoob is not a must. Let's just remember. Yeah,
yeah, but he's got some special importance with in Baba's
apparently, apparently.
apparent. So, J Baba, I'll continue. The following notes of Chacha's history are related to Baidul, who gathered them from various people in Ajmer. Chacha, a Pathan whose real name is Noor Ali Shah, came to Ajmer from his home near Peshawar many years ago. There are two footnotes, 1 and 2. Map reference D5, map reference B2. Can I also read the other Mazhub is Baba Shah Uddin of Bhatt, and the Jivan Mukta is Ishwar Das Swami of Yadgiri. See supplement.
So we can actually read those two supplement references because I don't think we have seen a Jivan Mukta mentioned earlier ever. I mean, generally also. We know we speculate as to who these people are, but we'll quickly read these supplement notes for these two people and come and also see the map and come back to this para. Yeah. So let's go to Baba Shahabuddin.
Karthik, I just want to add, since we are reading Wayfarers, they are definitely on the path.
Oh, of course. No, so we know where they. Oh, but how do I search in this? This is by place, right? Is it
It
by
was
place?
D5, I think. Oh, sorry,
No, no, no. This is sorted by place. So let me. Shahab. Yeah, this one Majzoob. Because two Majzoobs and one Jivan Mukta, right? That's what it said. Other Majzoob, Baba Shahabuddin of Bhatt.
yes, yes,
Yes, Bhattwala. Yeah, go ahead.
yes. Bhatt C3, Baba Shahabuddin Bhattwala Baba.
I think it's
Was
Bhattwala. Bhatt, because
Bhattwala.
there is a,
Yes.
yeah.
Thanks for correcting.
Yeah.
Bhattwala Baba, a God realized soul. He is one of the two seventh plane Majzoobs in India. It is a pity, therefore, that there is so little to record about him here. He is old, rather stout, and when he walks, he usually supports himself by an arm over someone's shoulder. Baba first bathed him and then sat alone with him for 1 hour. After the bath, Baba Shahibuddin himself led Baba to a suitable place for secluded contact. There is a story that many years ago, Baba Shahibuddin was sitting on a country track when a full laden bullock cart came along. The driver shouted at Baba Shahibuddin to get out of the way, but he did not move, and the peasant, in a frenzy of rage, drove the heavy cart over Shahabuddin's body. But Baba Shahabuddin emerged quite unhurt. The peasant was overcome by remorse and begged forgiveness, and the fame of Shahabuddin spread far and wide. The episode was counted a miracle For people run over by bullock carts usually die or are severely injured. Baba Shahabuddin is himself in the Majzub state, drowned in God, but he is and a party run by them ferocious aspect of ashram. In this ashram, said that he came one day many to Shahabuddin saying that he had and he begged Baba Baba Shah with him.
Ashok, we are
Though
there
by
is
Yeah,
a lot of breakup.
though
yeah.
by
So
Baidul
I think there's issues with your audio. Let me just reread from episode was. The episode was counted a
oh,
miracle for people run over by bullock carts usually die or are very severely injured. Baba Shahabuddin is himself in the Majzub state, drowned in God, but he has many disciples and a public kitchen is supported and run by them where free food is given to the poor. There is a man of ferocious aspect who lives alone in a hut in this ashram. It is said that he came one day many years ago to Shahabuddin saying that he had committed a murder and he begged Baba Shahabuddin to help him. Baba Shahabuddin simply told him to stay there with him and he's still there, though Baidul describes him as having a very tormented and forbidding countenance. So that's Bhatwala Baba Shahabuddin, the second of two musts, and the three people in the seventh plane at the time of writing this book in India. India, including India and Pakistan. Now let's go to Ishwar Chand, the other name. That this is a Jivan Mukta. Ishwar Das Swami. Yeah, yeah, Ashok.
parts and bits. It could be the Wi-Fi. I don't know. Uh,
Yeah, this is yeah. I think your audio it was fine till literally
oh,
that point. Maybe you can try again after this supplement. Uh, Yadgir's
okay.
Ishwar Das Swami. He's also called Telugu Swami. If we exclude Qutubs, this man is one of the three men of the seventh plane in India. He is a Jivan Mukta in the state of Turya Avastha. He is a tall, stoutish old man and he has a fair and lustrous face. Many years ago, when he lived in Shahabad, it appears that he had been a complete majzub, and in those days he used to be stoned by boys who presumably judged him to be mad. He now lives in the little village of Tumkur, a few miles from Yadgiri. The village Patel, headman, has built a special room for him near a certain temple, and since many come to visit Ishwar Das, a dharamshala has also been built there. The journey to the village was trying, for there were showers of rain on the way, and the party had to wade across a knee-deep river. For some strange reason, Baba developed a severe pain in the chest and was obliged to walk very slowly indeed. And he perspired so profusely that his clothes were drenched. As they drew near to the village, however, the sun came out and Baba's clothes were dried in the sun. When they reached the village, they went straight to the room where Ishwar Das lived. Ishwar Das first grasped Baidul by the hand, and when Baba approached, he suddenly looked radiantly happy and embraced Baba with an amazing fervor that astounded those who witnessed it. After Baba had sat with Ishwar Das for a while, he emerged and walked briskly back to Yadgiri, for the pain in his chest was now quite gone. So, among the many places Baba has visited, it's also Tumkur. Tumkur is a small town near Bangalore, and Yadgir, which we heard about, is closer to Tumkur. So actually, Tumkur is not even, but it's, I think it said E9, right? It did say E9. So E9.
That was for Guntur, I think.
Ah, okay. Was it?
I think it
No,
was
it's
Guntur.
Yadgiri. Yadgiri. Yadgiri is
Oh, sorry.
E9. Yeah, here it is. It's near Bijapur, but then okay, so maybe the he met Baba met him in Tumkur, but then no, but it says few miles from Yadgiri. So I think surely there's a error here because Tumkur is closer to Bangalore and Yadgiri is closer to Bijapur, which is 300 to 400 kilometers north of Bangalore. Anyway, that's minor. Let's go to back to the book, and so that's the reference to the two places that we saw, right?
Or
Um,
it may have another Yadgir near Tumkur, possibly.
yeah, possibly. So then the map reference is wrong because map is clearly
Uh-huh.
pointing to close to Bijapur. So some confusion is there for sure.
Yes.
Okay, so let's continue by starting from this. Before that, on the map, we'll just see Ajmer and Peshawar. Ajmer is in Rajasthan.
Near Jaipur. It'll be near Jaipur.
Yeah. Jodhpur is here. So
It's
Ajmer should be Amber, Jaipur. There it is. Ajmer. Can you see it here?
yes,
That's
yes.
Ajmer. And then if you go uh, e- west, you'll see Peshawar. Peshawar is obviously in
Pakistan.
yeah, Lahore. Peshawar is there.
Karthik, there's a reference of a must ashram in Ajmer. One second. Something was mentioned there on the map. Can you please take it back to Ajmer on the
Yes,
map?
yes, 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 yes. Yes, but we have not come across that in the book yet. So maybe we'll
Okay.
talk about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So where was it? There it is. So 1939, February, Mastashram. Oh, but this is earlier than the point we are in the book. So we are in the 40s now. So this is 1939. Maybe an occurrence will come. So right now we are reviewing the five favorites, right? So we've not seen that in the favorites. Okay, let's get back. Let's start from the beginning of this paragraph, please. The following notes, and if the audio continues to be bad, we'll rotate Ashokji.
We'll just, shall I try once or
Yeah,
would
please go
someone?
ahead.
Okay. Jay Baba, the following notes of Chacha's history are related to Baidul, who gathered them from various people in Ajmer. Chacha, a Pathan, whose real name is Noor Ali Shah, came to Ajmer from his home near Peshawar many years ago. His wife and son are still alive, and from time to time, this son comes from Peshawar to visit his aged father. Chacha was a Hafiz, one who knew the Quran by heart, and he came to Ajmer to teach Arabic. Soon after he arrived, he went to the famous shrine of Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, and he seems to have felt irresistibly drawn to stay there. For for 12 years, he remained in the Sola Khamba graveyard in Khwaja Sahib shrine, and something seems to have happened to him there, for he became thenceforth a Majzub. At the end of 12 years, he emerged from the shrine and for 6 years sat in one place. Thereafter, for a year, he went to Taragar, the great fort on the mountain behind Ajmer. From Taragar, he made his way to Indore, footnote 1, about 300 miles to the south, and there is a strange and hardly credible story that he died there and was buried. At Indore, he had been known as Ganja Baba, Ganja
Ganja.
Baba, Ganja Baba. Ganja means bald. A year or so after he was supposed to have died, some people came from Indore to Ajmer at the time of the yearly festival at Khwaja Sahib's shrine, and to their astonishment, they discovered Chacha, the Ganja Baba of Indore, alive and sitting by a water tap near the shrine. It is said that they called it is said that they called others from Indore who had both known Ganja Baba and had witnessed his death and burial, and they too confirmed his identity. This strange tale of resurrection then began to be disseminated abroad, and the fame of Chacha grew in stature. Whether this story is the purest fiction or not, I do not know, and the reader will no doubt accept or reject it according to his inclination. At least it is an example of strange legend that may grow up around a personality such as Chacha. After sitting for some years by the tap, Chacha eventually moved into a tiny hovel of a room in which he has lived for the last 16 to 18 years. The contacts between Baba and Chacha began in February 1939. In December 1938, Baba set out on a motor tour with a group of Eastern and Western disciples. From Mehrabad, they went to Hyderabad, set in a crescent of granite hills in the heart of the Deccan, and thence they sped north through Jabalpur and the forests of the central provinces to Banaras, Agra, Mathura, and Delhi. After seeing these magnificent cities, whose walls have been battered by the arrows and guns of countless armies, they turned westwards across the sandy plains of Rajputana to Ajmer. Ajmer, the abode of Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, whose shrine is illustrious throughout India and the Muslim world, lies cradled in the dry Aravali hills.
Okay, let's
Often
just quickly see those map references. Again, prominent cities, but we are familiar with all of that. So
And there's also one also. See, there's two.
that's Indore.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
Indore.
Indore. That's Indore. So Hyderabad is here, and then Indore is here. Jabalpur is here. So Baba went from Hyderabad, drove uphill, went to Indore, then Jabalpur, then Mathura. Mathura is spelt as Matra, but basically it's Ayodhya, Matra. Where is Mathura? Mathura is closer to Delhi, I think, right? Yeah, here's Mathura, spelt Matra, and Agra. So these are the places that were mentioned there. So it is Agra, Banaras, and Delhi. So again, all in the same district. Banaras is a bit south. um, Aligarh, Shahjahanpur, Bareilly. Uh, yeah, okay. So Ajmer is here. Banaras is here, right? So I think we get a sense of the amazing travel that Baba keeps doing. Okay, let's go back. Yeah,
It's
a
it's
few days.
phenomenal. Absolutely, it's
Yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah.
A few days after they arrived, Baba began contacting many masks, and a small mask ashram was established. This ashram is described elsewhere. Footnote 1, map reference D7.
So one is, I think, Ajmer, right? Or what
Indore.
is?
Sorry. Uh, Indore. Earlier was
Uh, yeah, it was all already referred about. Indore only. Okay, so there's a mast ashram even in Indore. Okay.
so Chacha in the back of a Tonga after this one and only bath for about 30 years. He is wearing a spotless new Kafni Ajmer February 1939. So there seems to be a significance about February 1939.
One more photograph. I think this is a famous photograph, and uh, those of you who have visited Bairamangala, the Sufis created those murals, right? In the murals, there is Chacha, right? So just as apart from Muhammad Mast, I think Chacha is also in the murals. Yeah. So this is him in a lungi, Satara, July 1947. Okay. I think it's continued from that last line here. This ashram is described elsewhere, map reference D7, 1939. Okay, and I will therefore confine the following paragraphs to Baba's work with Chacha. At that time, can we start from here?
I'll
At that
start.
time.
Shall I start?
Please.
Yeah, Baba. At that time, Chacha was living in the squalid and verminous little hovel near Khwaja Sahib's shrine and was never known to move from it. An attendant, Mujawar, saw to his needs, and Chacha himself was in a state of filth almost beyond belief. He was dressed in an old hat and unwholesome clothes that were stained and impregnated with stale tea and remnants of decaying food. The name Chacha was given to him because, in his fondness for tea, cha, he used to call out Chacha, tea, whether he wanted it, whenever he wanted it. I read it again. The name Chacha was given to him or because, in his fondness for tea, cha, he used to call out Chacha whenever he wanted it. A great deal of tea, instead of being swallowed, would spill over his clothes and also, heaven knows how, over his hat. And the latter was encrusted with stale tea and sugar and stuck irremovably to his scalp. Kaka was sent to bring Chacha to Baba, and perhaps, as in the case of Karim Baba, he was given the inner key that opened the door to Chacha's consciousness. At any rate, Kaka astounded the local people by bringing Chacha to Baba's house, thus doing something that no one had achieved before. For Chacha had never been known to move anywhere at anyone's behest since the day he had set foot in Ajmer so many years before. Can you move it up a bit? Yeah. For about 2 weeks after his initial contact, Baba rose nightly at 3:30 a.m. and traveled through the dark, empty streets to Chacha's Havel.
No, hold on.
Sorry,
As
I,
soon as it
I'm
starts from
sorry.
as soon as.
My bad. Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Um, as soon as Chachas arrived at the house, Baba and the Mandi set about giving him a bath. But before this could be done, his hat and his clothes had to be cut away with scissors. For as we had already learned, they were so stiffened and adherent with tea, food, and filth that neither his raiment nor his cap could be removed in any other way. One day, on that day, Chacha underwent the unique experience of having his first bath for about 30 years, and it became, in fact, his last bath also. For even during his stay in Satara in 1947, he steadfastly refused the bath and is not believed to have been bathed by anyone before or since. After his bath, he was clad in a new kafni and he asked Baba for a special vegetable and some jwar, millet bread. These were brought and Baba fed him with his own hands. After the meal, Chacha demanded a tonga, and when one had been called, he climbed into it, and telling Baba to sit beside him, the two set off together, Chacha giving him a brief order to the tonga driver to take them to Taragar. Baba, however, did not seem inclined to go with Chacha all the way to his ancient fortress and took Chacha as far as his hovel and left him there. For about 2 weeks after his initial contact, Baba rose nightly at 3:30 a.m. and traveled through the dark, empty streets to Chacha's hovel.
All this is happening in Ajmer, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And sat alone with Chacha for about an hour each night. These nocturnal visits were necessary because by day the crowds were too great to allow privacy of contact. Between these first meetings in February 1939 and visit of Chacha to Satara in 1947, Baba went many times to see Chacha and sit alone with him. For the dates of these various conferences, the reader is referred to Ajmer in the supplement. The critically minded reader may perhaps have wondered why Baba did not arrange to have Chacha's execrable hovel cleaned out or have him moved to more healthy environment. Baba, in fact, gave orders on several occasions to his mandli to have the place swept and garnished, but Chacha rebutted all such efforts and ordered the men to go away. The same attitude of apparently being attached to his filthy clothes was conspicuous when Chacha was in Satara in 1947. He actually opposed attempts to have them removed, and Baba explained at that time that the clothes and odds and ends that are must kept by him or by his person had some inner significance, and it was for this reason that they clung so obstinately to them. In July 1942, when Baba visited Ajmer to contact Chacha and one of the two other musts, an elaborate arrangement was made for keeping Chacha amply supplied with tea. As usual, Baba went to sit with Chacha late in the night when the streets were empty of the crowds that hustled past his hovel by day. A large samovar containing 100 cups of tea with a tap to draw the tea and glowing charcoal to keep it piping hot was placed in the corner of the room. The idea of having this samovar near at hand was that should Chacha call for tea, which he usually did every few minutes, Baba would be able to fill a cup at once without leaving the room, and that as a consequence of the immediate response to his imperative demands for tea, Chacha's mood be kept at his best. In the account of Muhammad earlier in this chapter, I have already mentioned that Baba has stressed that he must fulfill the slightest whim of a must, and that if he fails to do this, the rapport is vitiated by an irritability on the part of the must who feels his wish to have been frustrated. In this way, musts, like children, have the most inconsequent fancies and become upset if they are thwarted. On this occasion, however, as if to spite the conscious presence of the tea urn standing in the corner of the room, Chacha upset all prognostications, and throughout the 2 hours of contact, he asked for tea only twice or thrice. Thus, Baba emerged from his silent work. He gave orders for the 97 or 98 cups of tea that were left to be given free to the few late pilgrims who were still passing in and out of the shrine of Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti. On another visit to Ajmer, Baba and his men went alone to Chacha's hovel an hour or two before dawn. This hovel was a tiny room about 5 feet high, and above it there were there was another small room with a few steps in the wall so that a man could clamber up and down to the upper room without much difficulty. In this upper room lived a man who had become a kind of attendant, Mujawar to Chacha. He used to feed him and generally see to his scanty needs and would be given tips by those who revered Chacha. Baba, whenever he went there, used to tip this man 5 rupees so that he came to anticipate Baba's visits with much pleasure. On this particular morning, the Mujawar was fast asleep in his tiny upper room, but some reflex that connected the awareness of his years with the happy memories of the past tips caused him to awaken suddenly in response to the voices of Baba's men below. In his anxiety to come quickly down to Baba, he forgot in his awakened state that about 5 feet separated the level of his room from the level of the street below, and he tossed himself out of the door and fell headlong into the street. Fortunately, he came to no harm, and Baba and his men laughed very merrily at his expense. He got 5 rupees. In July 1946, Baba again visited Ajmer, and Kaka tells how jovial a mood Chacha then exhibited. Baba entered his room with cup and saucer in one hand and a kettle full of hot tea in another. Chacha, however, declined the tea and asked for mutton and chapati. Chacha is a Pathan by caste, and Pathans are great mutton eaters. This was brought and given to him, and he called 3 times for more. Baba then sat with him for about 1.5 hours, and Chacha could be heard laughing all the time. In the pleasant hours between supper and bedtime, when Baba's Mandli sit about and talk of the day's happenings or of anything in general, the topic often turns to the subject of Baba and his mast work. At such times, it is generally considered that Kaka's outstanding achievement was that of bringing Karim Baba of Calcutta to Baba in 1940. The consummation of Baidul's work was, without a doubt, the almost miraculous accomplishment of bringing Chacha all the way from Ajmer to Satara in June 1947. It is perhaps not possible to give an idea of the waywardness, the obduracy, or if you like to call a spade, of the out and out obstinacy of a Majzub such as Chacha. In their relationship with the world and its workaday folk, such men take not the slightest notice of anyone. They appear either to harbor a kind of spiritual disdain of mankind or are merely as utterly indifferent to it as a newborn child. It is only when they feel the pull of a greater spiritual force, such as Baba, that they occasionally comply with the request of Baba's Mandli. In this way, Gulab Baba of Elishpur, whom Kaka brought to the Dabalpur ashram in 1939, was interesting, for the remarks of Gulab Baba showed that he felt Baba drawing him, fought against it, but was compelled to come to him in spite of a part of his nature that struggled against it. At the end of May 1947, Baba and his group moved from Mahabaleshwar to Satara. Plans were made for a mast ashram as soon as Baba arrived, and Baidul was dispatched to Ajmer with orders to try to bring Chacha to Satara. By the end of May, the Indian landscape is scorched and forbidding, and the dry soil seems to yearn for the drenching monsoon rains that come in June. As Baidul travels this dreary landscape on his way to Ajmer, one imagines the kind of long thoughts of hope and doubt that came and went through his mind as he drew nearer and nearer to Chacha's home. He reached Ajmer in the last week of May. The annual festival of Khwaja Sahib was in full swing. The weather was abominably hot and the water supply deficient, and a place of seething with crowds come to visit the great shrine. For 3 or 4 days, Baidul made frequent visits to Chacha, but all attempts to persuade him to come away were fruitless. On the evening of 31st May, he went again, by now depressed by a conviction that his task was hopeless, and Chacha asked him to bring rice, mutton, and curds, and to feed him. This Baidul did, and Chacha then asked for more. This request having been satisfied, he finally ordered and was given some iced water. Baidul was then surprised to gather the forces of his persuasion and throw him in a direct and final frontal attack on Chacha's obduracy, and grasping Chacha by hand, he told him to come along. To Baidul's astonishment, Chacha got up at once, picking up a piece of dirty blanket from the floor, and followed him out into the street. The two climbed into a tonga and went at once to the station. Karthik, would
Okay,
you
do
like
you
to
want?
read?
Yeah.
No, would you like to look up the word obduracy? It's come up a couple of times.
Okay, sure. Obduracy. So we can rotate reading. So definitions of obduracy. Resoluteness by virtue of being unyielding and inflexible. Synonyms are adamance, unyieldingness, type of firmness, firmness of purpose, resoluteness, so on and so forth. Right. Okay. Sanjay ji, this celebration or whatever festival is called in the Muslim tradition Urs, right?
Yes,
The
Urs.
Urs, yeah, yeah. So I think that's what is being.
Near many of these fakis, they hold this Urs where
Yeah,
everybody
each
assembles and pay their pay their respects to the mazar
correct.
of the master.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's called the Urs. Yeah. Okay, just
Yeah.
confirming.
So,
Okay.
so there is a special significance of Ajmer because I've been to this Mohinuddin Mohinuddin Chushti's shrine, and it's really I never realized that it is also linked with Baba.
No, so I think Moinuddin Chishti is a perfect master, and Baba has given a lot of importance to his. I mean, obviously, perfect master is just a handful, and I think he has been singularly responsible for the Sufi movement historically, right? The Sufi traditions being rooted in the Indian subcontinent are largely attributed to Khwaja Garibun Nawaz, which is the title Moinuddin Chishti has. And yeah, I've been
Yeah,
to Ajmer as well.
Baba's schoolmate was one of the trustees of Ajmer Trust. And in the talks of Iraj on that Mandi Hall talk, there is a talk where he sends out a message for donations, and Baba had donated money for Ajmer Sharif. That's a beautiful talk.
Interesting.
So yeah, so it's not just
Okay.
a visit; it's also there are other connects. Yeah,
Next,
Sure.
yeah.
Karthik, at this point,
So,
somebody would like to
yeah,
read, or we can
yeah.
rotate.
So, Mamaji, are you in a position to read for a bit?
Yes, yes,
Or,
yes.
okay, so unless one. Yeah, we can start from there.
Unless one has seen a religious fair in India, it is barely possible to visualize the colorful crowds of pilgrims wandering here and there in a mood of cheerful relaxation. If one is part of the crowd busy with no special task, the sight of such honest folk is fascinating. Baidul, however, bent on the divine purpose of bringing Chacha to Baba, found these crowds an additional obstacle across his path. The railway station, as the gateway through which most of the pilgrims to Ajmer must arrive and depart, was obstructed by a milling concourse of passengers. It was obvious that it would be impossible to get Chacha either into the station or onto any train leaving for Bombay. Baidul therefore hired a taxi and coaxing Chacha into it, drove to Biwar, about 30 miles to the southwest. At Biwar, he managed to get Chacha into a train, and with many changes at many junctions, he bore his precious charge closer and closer to Baba. Whenever he had to get Chacha out of one train into another, he would call for the special chair that is kept on every important station for carrying invalids, and would have Chacha lifted onto this chair and transported to the next train. On 3rd June, the two arrived in Satara, and Baba's daily contact with Chacha began. Imagine a small rectangular room with side-washed walls, whitewashed walls, a cool floor of grey Shabbat stone, two windows, and a door opening directly onto a sunlit gravel space between the back of the house and the low kitchen buildings. In front of this room, a screen of Satya made a small enclosure about the size of the room itself and created a kind of private compound so that the room was secluded from those walking to and fro on the various tasks of the ashram.
Mamaji, it's Byawar, and I think Byawar is I know Byawar is in Rajasthan and it's closer to Jodhpur.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's Byawar there on the left side. Karthik on the left.
Okay.
Byawar.
Very near Ajmer, I think.
And on the way to Jodhpur, I don't know, can't see Jodhpur anyway.
Uh, in one corner of this unadorned room, upon an oblong strip of matting, Chacha sat. Throughout the 5 weeks that he stayed in Satara, he never moved from this room. And although most of the day he sat in his accustomed corner facing the doorway, he would occasionally spontaneously move yards and sit in an opposite angle of the room. Each day, Baba spent most of his time playing cha-cha with tea and food or sitting with him in silent conference. During these weeks, after sitting for an hour or two with Ali Shah and particularly with Chacha, Baba would emerge with face pale and tired, and often with clothes drenched in perspiration. It seemed as if in his silent conference with these great musts, he had to focus the rays of his infinite power through the lens of his body, and his body felt the strain. An amusing incident occurred one day that illustrates the kind of uh, uh, reflex material life that Chacha lives. One morning, Baba given him had been giving him tea, and Chacha suddenly began calling for more tea, offering it to Baba, and telling him to drink it. This went on for about a dozen cups, and Baba then began to feel it difficult to drink more. He therefore took the cup and saucer out of the door each time that Chacha told him to fetch more tea, and a few moments later re entered the room, handing an empty cup and saucer carefully to Chacha, as if it were brimful of tea. Chacha would then go through the motions of pouring the tea from the cup into the saucer, a common way of drinking tea in India, and hand over the saucer, which he evidently believed to be full of tea, to Baba. Baba would then go through the motions of drinking, and this farce was played about 50 times, with Chacha apparently none the wiser. In Satara, he not only refused a bath, but it took weeks before he would allow his filthy, tattered clothes to be removed. It was indeed remarkable that this great Mazub, having sat almost without moving in an execrable and loathsome hovel for nearly 20 years, has remained in a state of robust health in spite of having flouted the basic precepts of hygiene. While at Satara, Chacha was not given much to talking and sat most of the day with his legs either folded rather awkwardly or with his knees drawn up halfway to his chest and one or both elbows resting on thigh and knee. His head would usually be bent slightly forward so that his bearded chin lay almost on his chest, and his head would nod a little up and down most of the time, like that of a man dozing in a train. His eyes were usually but half open and had the faint milky ring at the edge of the cornea so often seen in old people. He had a long face and head crowning what for a Pathan was perhaps an unusually small body, and the expression on his face was like that of someone dreaming a strange and lovely dream with eyes open. The large portrait shows something of this look and something of its gentle simplicity. He had a laconic manner of speech with a thickness and indistinctiveness of the syllables, like one talking in his sleep, and would seldom say much more than "oh, oh, come, come, jao, jao, go away, cha, cha, tea, or naam, nahi, no, no." Of his dirtiness, of his refusal to have a bath, and his reluctance to have either clean clothes or to allow his bedding and immediate vicinity to be kept clean, enough has already been said. He was apparently unaware of the functions of his body and had thus the same sort of indifference as a newborn child. But unlike a child, he cared neither whether he was fed or not, nor whether he slept, nor whether his body was hot or cold, dry or wet, and yet, in spite of this, he remained in perfect health. At the end of the first week of July, Baba explained that his work with Chacha was completed, and on 10th July, Baidul set forth with him to Ajmer. Baidul has described how, as the train dove into Ajmer station, Chacha became suddenly radiantly happy, got out of the compartment spontaneously, walked briskly down the platform and out of the station, and at once sat in a tonga. Baidul climbed in with him, glad to find his work so easy and to set off to Chacha's hovel. Now, however, Chacha's mood seemed to change, and when they arrived at the hovel, he sat in the back of the tonga, deaf to please that he should climb out of it. The tonga driver, after waiting patiently for about half an hour, complained that it was time for him to feed and water his pony, and he unharnessed the nag and left the tonga with the shafts resting on the ground. Chacha, however, remained perched awkwardly in the back seat, and Baidul thereupon took hold of the shafts and raised them slowly and gently so that Chacha, in compliance with the law of gravity, was tipped out of his seat. The people of Ajmer were happy indeed to see their Chacha amongst them again, for it was not generally known that he had been taken to Baba in Satara. Baidul was told of a certain goldsmith of Ajmer who loved and revered Chacha, and that during Chacha's absence, this man came every evening to his towel and sat there weeping. And so great, this great Mazub is back in Ajmer, and one suspects that the link between him and Baba will be renewed from time to time, and that Baba will either call him again or will visit him again, as he has done so often before, in that strange and dirty room near the shrine of Khwaja Sahib. In conclusion, we may call an extract from Shamse Tabriz, for though literally the words apply to us, we may, I think, consider them appropriate to this great Mazub. The man of God is a treasure in the ruin, in a ruin. The man of God is a treasure in a ruin. Okay. A group at Rahuri, Baba at work at Rahuri. He is shaving the heads of inmates. Bare-headed man in a kafni watching Baba at work is Muhammad. Is Muhammad.
Okay, so with that, we come to the close of the the second chapter. The second chapter is the five favorites. So we finished Baba's broad definition and background for the Mas. That's chapter one, apart from the four words. Then we finished chapter two, which was the five favorites with photographs. The five favorites being Muhammad, Chatti Baba, Chacha, Karim Baba, and Alisha. And now we're going to chapter 3. And the first one is the Mad Ashram, August 1936 to September 1940.
So,
Are you in a position to continue for a few more minutes, Mamaji? Then we can have Ashish.
Jay Baba, before that, I have a question. Now, if we come across a mad person, or a person who seems unusual, how do we identify whether he is a must? I mean, it's a question for everyone, but I'm just thinking that it's very difficult. The musts were eccentric or sort of unusual, not eccentric. Sorry, pardon me, Baba. I mean, they were unusual, and some had uh, an inkling to.
I heard one thing is even though they are dirty, they don't smell bad. That's what one thing I heard. There may be many aspects. One this aspect I heard about it.
So that is miraculous, actually, despite the normal norms of hygiene. And so they are so spiritually, I mean, blessed that despite all this, they are so internally pure that they don't smell bad. So that's one. That's a very good observation. Thanks, Ashish. So I think we all can collate traits from this and help me answer my question, please.
Yeah, I think over the course of this book,
Ashok ji, yeah,
we may
sorry.
find out more and more criteria to help detect which is a mad person and which is a god mad or
Got
god intoxicated person. I think Ashish's point is important. Second, there could be a following that exists for that person because there's things that he says and does which those in the lower planes and those who are not on the path are able to derive succor and benefit from. So, because of that, there may be a following around such a person, and so on and so forth. But quite honestly, I don't think it's our lookout to go looking for that now. It's good for us to be aware of this, but then I think we are not tasked with trying to find that. If we come across and we notice, of course, we should pay our respects and be aware in this fact that there are so many types of people. So our instinctive reaction could be negative before understanding about mus about these people and just classify them as mad as probably a burden to society and so on and so forth. I think this book at the very least should give us a greater tolerance and respect for these people, because there could be among those so-called mad quite a few musts or people on the plains. Yeah. Sanjay, you were saying
Absolutely.
something.
I was about to say the same thing actually. I would not seek or determine whether a person is a mad or must. Having known what is written in this book, we will just leave it and pass on from there actually. That's it.
Perfect.
In heart you just say Jai Baba and move on. Yeah.
That's it.
What is the
Yeah.
descriptions they are given? Some must was like taking the cigarette, tea, even the flesh also. But I didn't read anywhere about the alcohol, right? Not a single must was taking the alcohol. Probably not sure. Maybe in the Quran that mentioned that alcohol is prohibited, but not a single must was taking the alcohol, right? It's like flesh was
That's
there.
that's a
Uh,
good point. We have not come across that as well till now. Second point is, and you're right, alcohol is haram, so it's prohibited in Islam. From that, I'm reminded of one more aspect. Very few of the musts that we have seen till now, or the advanced souls that we have seen till now, are non-Muslims. They are at least from the Muslim background. So, other than Ishwar Chand and potentially Chatti Baba, right? Most of the others are clearly having a Muslim background, Muslim name, so on and so forth. So that's just another observation at this point, but we'll see as we find
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Though Muhammad was a Hindu actually.
Yes.
Of
Oh,
course,
okay.
people started calling him
Mohammed.
Muhammad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When he came to Mumbai. Yeah.
And in this reading, what I feel that is some of these must are beyond religion, but see, Mohammedans seem to have a inkling of identifying or revering this group of people.
More
So
than
that's
Hindus.
a unique
Yes.
feature which we need to say ponder on.
Correct. I think the Sufi tradition, I mean, you just look at the terms also, right? Majzub and all these are so Mohammedan in concept that you're right, that their reverence is obviously the root cause for them appearing more often there, right? So it could be, yeah. Yeah, so Mamaji, you are ready to read a few more lines? I'm a few more pages, or do you want to move to Ashish?
Yep. One question. So Sufism and Muslims, is there a connect? Because Sufism is a order, right? Or
So it's a loose order. The most strictest order is actually Sufism reoriented, which is the Western order, right? The rest of it, the Sufi movement, it's more a movement, right? And it's largely in the subcontinent and is today dwindling because over the last few decades, Wahhabism and traditional Islam has become stronger and stronger. And traditional Islam frowns upon the Sufi movement because the Sufi movement is closer to, as we have understood, Vedanta, and hence has a recognition and allows for other forms and faiths, right? And it says that all the paths lead to the same and so on and so forth. Whereas traditional Islam says Allah is I mean, they have a different concept as far as
He's the only
uh,
God. Yeah.
that he's the only God, right? So that big
Yeah.
difference ensures that Sufi does not get importance within the Islam, especially the traditional Islam, which kind of dominates the world of Islam today. Second, within Islam, there is multiple sects. There is Shias and Sunnis. The Shias are far more. Shias only become, I mean, Sufis, right? The Sufis are closer to the Shia sect than the Sunni sect. And yeah, I think there are Shias and Sunnis in India as well as many parts of the world. And there's a constant battle to supremacy between those groups within Islam as well, between Shias and Sunnis. Anyway,
yeah,
this is
so
my limited knowledge. I
no,
don't
no.
know much.
Well said, Karthik. And I think what after reading the literature related to Baba, we have to be just think that we have one universal, uh, religion or belief, and all religions are just the pathways to that. So to go beyond the religions and the traditions and the you know and go above all that and just admit to our own selves that there is only one uh, goal in life, and that's God realization.
Well said. Well said. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Ma okay, please. Yeah. Continue, Mamaji.
Chapter 3, The Mad Ashram, August 1936 to September 1940. At Rahuri, Meher Baba struck the first notes of a new movement in the symphony of his life. After his vigorous achievements with the school at Mehrabad, the early 30s were spent in forging the first links with the Western world. And when this had been accomplished, he turned in 1936 to this service of mad and God-mad men. At Ruhari Ashram, the Ruhari Ashram was principally for bad people, ordinary insane men from the towns of the surrounding country. There were, as will be seen, a few genuine Masts and a few got mad, but the greater number were mere psychotics of one kind or another, with nothing spiritual about them. This ashram, although it stands apart from the latter centers for Masts, does, however, have one factor in common with them, and that is the nature of its external routine. And it is because of this similarity of the external work that Rohori was, in a way, the starting point of the later work with Masts. The history of this mad ashram is complex because although it began at Rahori, where it occupied pride of place in Baba's activities, it later moved to Mehrabad and Bangalore, and it was at Mehrabad that the climax of its career was reached. It seems as if this climax was the drama performed by the inmates in September 1938. For immediately following this performance, about half the ashram was disbanded, and from that time forth, Baba's energies were concentrated for the most part on other tasks, and the mad ashram passed, as a Victorian might say, into a slow decline until its final decease uh, in the autumn of 1940. In this account of the mad ashram, I propose first to describe Rahori and thereafter to write a few lines about the more interesting inmates. And finally, I shall devote a few paragraphs to the various moves of the ashram. Rahori lies about 30 miles north of Ahmednagar, which you will see in the map. Rahori, yes, Mad Ashram, 1936 to April 1937, Rahori. Pimpalgam, Ahmednagar are very near to that. Okay. Rahori is a compact country town on the banks of the tributary of sacred Godavari. Can you move the script?
No, actually, you have to start from the first line.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll have to reduce the size, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rahuri lies about 30 miles north of Ahmednagar on the roads that link Ahmednagar with Nasik, and it was therefore of special convenience because it lay between the permanent headquarters at Mehrabad and the retreat at Nasik that was being prepared for the reception of the Western group of disciples. Rahori is a compact country town on the banks of a tributary of sacred Godavari and is particularly gladdened by a profusion of trees. The ashram shared this benison, for it was built in a grove of orange trees, and there were a number of dense and wide-spreading mango trees of great height and age, which added to the agreeable atmosphere of the place. It
We
was,
see venison.
ah, yes, benevolent, venison, something related.
But just
Very
a
good.
just a question, Karthik.
Yeah,
Is the Rahuri people know where the ashram was? Exact location is known, right?
I
Should
don't
be known, I
know. I don't
suppose.
know. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's worth finding out because if we are there for a few days, we might, just drive down to Rahuri. It's very
Is it?
close.
Yeah. Talking
It's
of
worth
which,
finding out.
yeah. Talking of which, are you going to be there in for Silence Day?
Yeah, I'm going to be there.
Okay, so I'm planning to be there as well. So I
Yeah.
arrive 7th and I'm there till 11th.
Uh, I'll come only on 9th and leave on 11th. Yeah,
Okay,
Sunday.
all right. Jai Baba.
Yeah. Jai Baba. See you there.
See you there indeed. So
And you have to
venison,
get
sorry.
get my counter
Okay. Well,
if you have it.
yeah.
That
Of course, yes. I got it.
Tabis. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Sure.
Jai Baba.
On the 5th July, there's a program in Lonavala also. It's a big program. 5th and 6th July, I think.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
If you have any details, just post it on the
Sure. My parents
platforms.
are going. I will ask them and we'll put it.
Yeah. They may be having. Yeah.
Yeah.
Send it. Yeah. Post it. Yeah.
So venison is not even a common word. It's basically blessing, a blessing, rewards and benisons of marriage. Meaning of benison is blessing or benediction, right? So that's
What
to
was
say
the
that
word?
the
What was
same
the word?
venison, BENIS ON,
Okay.
to say that Rahuri was blessed with a lot of trees, and so was the ashram, which also had the same benison. So it was also
Oh, wow.
blessed with a lot of trees and
Yes.
orchards. I mean, it was in an orange grove.
Okay.
So we start with it was in these.
It was in these unusually attractive surroundings that the temporary sheds of the ashram were erected, and a special one-roomed hut was built for Baba himself. A dispensary was also opened, which within a week or two of its inception became famous throughout the countryside. Every day, hundreds of Sikh, many of them more widely scattered hamlets buried in the ultimate recesses of the wildest sort of country, flocked to this dispensary, and Neelu, who was in charge, was busy from dawn to dusk attending to them. Neelu. What about Neelu? This Dr. N.N. Godse. He is the doctor. He was known as Neelu. Okay.
Yeah, Nilu is the person that died in the Satara accident along with Baba. And he was, apart from Donkins, in the Mandali, the two medically qualified people. So Dr. Nilu and Donkins.
Yeah.
Okay, in August.
Yeah. Men. Other than
Oh,
women,
yes,
Dr.
you're
Gaur.
right. Dr. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Goher was women. Yeah.
Yes.
And who was supposed to be the new soul, emerging soul right now with us in this accident, who died?
Are you referring to Vidya Garu?
Yes,
That's Nilu.
Neelu. Yes.
Yeah, it is Nilu. Yeah.
Okay.
I would avoid discussing that because it's very
Yeah, absolutely.
personal.
Yes.
You people
Agree.
may or may not agree because we are recording it for future.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Let's
Yeah.
continue. In August 1936.
In August 1936, as soon as the place was shipshape, Various men were dispatched to fetch Mad and got Mad and bring them to Rahori. The management of the ashram was in the hands of Pleader and Baidul, the practical meniety seen to principally by Baidul, since Pleader would go off from time to time to select and bring back those he thought suitable for Baba's work. Baba's work, his visible and external work, was to shave, bathe, clothe, and feed each inmate as soon as he arrived, and each day to score through ashram latrine and to bathe and sit in seclusion with a certain number of the old inmates. In this way, he would throw every ounce of energy into doing every sort of menial task and was in very fact master of all and servant of all. The inmates were given every liberty except that of stepping outside the extensive limits of the ashram garden. Whatever they asked for would be given them, and their uh, pouches were better filled with wholesome and nourishing food than most of them had ever known before. There was perhaps nothing unusual in ministering faithfully to the physical needs of such people, but Baba's work did not stop there, and indeed side of it was the that side of it was the least important to all. What Baba did was to give the human and the divine touch to the most uninspiring chores, like the fragrance of a garden by night. The essence of his selfless love permeated the darkness of these broken and distorted minds. The men came to feel this and in their own queer ways would reciprocate the love that Baba gave them, and many came to worship him as a divine incarnation. These two factors of Baba's selfless service and superhuman love were sufficiently evident for a casual observer to sense their influence. But in addition, there has always been an impression amongst Baba's disciples that the ultimate purpose of his work with most advanced souls and demand is a spiritual one whose application stretches far beyond the limits of his external and visible labors. It is unfortunately not possible to corroborate this hypothesis because when Baba is approached for an explanation, he either remains silent or his replies are so evasive that it is clear that he has no intention of divulging the arcana of what he really does. But this feeling does exist, and there is no doubt that the work that Baba has done with advanced must since these early Rahori days has substantially added to the belief that the invisible issue of his efforts far outweighs their immediate and tangible results. All that Baba says about his work with the God Mad and Mus is that he loves them and they love him, that he helps them and they help him. With this laconic statement, we will therefore break away from further speculation and turn into a description of the more important and entertaining inmates of the Mad Ashram. This word was unique. Very few words, using very few words, not speaking much. Okay. Arcana. Yes, I wanted to know about this. Arcana. Stick romance. Video game.
So arcana is specialized knowledge that is mysterious to the uninitiated. So the specialized knowledge that Baba had about what he's doing with the musts, he never disclosed. So if you remember, divulging the arcana of what he really does. So this is where divulging was there.
Yeah. Abracadabra.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was another word which is minutiae, right? Which is the details. I think it's details and yeah, the small, precise or trivial details of something, right? So earlier in the previous page, there was another word. Like we agree, I think there's quite a lot of English that we end up learning
Yes, yes.
in this
Suddenly
book.
this came up, no? The previous chapter, it was not so evident.
Exactly,
His
exactly.
writing is totally in a moody way, I think.
Yes, yes.
And he doesn't seem to say repeat the same word in each sentence. So he will go for another word similar to that or things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
Yes.
think we should create an appendix for this book and give it to Trust, to add in the on the website where all these words are, like we are able to see in dictionary, right?
Correct,
Online we are doing. So if that is
correct,
there,
correct,
the reader would be benefited.
correct, correct, correct.
They can quickly refer to that. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, Muhammad was. We probably do a page or
yes.
two more.
Muhammad was brought to Rahuri soon after the ashram was opened. He was a real must and has been fully described in chapter 2 as one of Baba's 5 favorites. Besides Muhammad, there were 4 genuine musts in the Mad ashram: Arjun, Tagdu, Bua, Lal Sahib, and one who was brought from Bombay for a few days only and was the first must ever to be bathed by Baba. Arjun joined the ashram during its later phase at Mehrabad, and he was easily picked out from the others because of his long, tousled black hair and long fingernails, neither of which he would allow to be cut short. He had a prodigious thirst and every day drank 2 full-sized buckets full of water. He was a moderate must. Dagdu Bua joined in Rahori and seemed to like it if you called him Babu, for he would then shrug his shoulders, hug his chest, and look happy. In the early days, he used to climb one or other of the great trees in the garden and sit clinging to the slender and insecure uppermost branches for 4 or 5 hours every day. When the ashram moved to Mehrabad, he developed a habit of shifting piles of earth from one part of the compound to another. And for a time, he seemed to think that the main hall of the ashram was not as clean as it could or should be, for he would bustle in 5 or 6 times a day and sweep it out with a broom. This meant that every one sitting there was disturbed, for he seems to have been thorough in his work, and when obstructed by reclining forms of a fellow inmate, he would make him move out of the way. He was a moderate must. Lal Sahib joined in Rahori, he used to fall at Baba's feet, embrace him with fervor, and call him God. He was a great friend of Punjia, a lovable half-wit whom I will shortly describe. He used to promise Punjia that he would bring him a goods wagon brimming with gold, jewels, and all kinds of treasure, and would marry him to a Raja's daughter. He would also fumble in his pocket, saying he had a crore, 10 million of rupees there, and would ask Punjia whether he should pull them out right away and give them to him, to which Punjia would always answer, no, not yet. Lal Sahib was a good must, and when the ashram was closed in 1940, he was sent to Nasik. He is still in Nasik today, where he is widely revered. So, Nasik today. So that refers to what time actually this book,
1945, I think.
45, when it was published.
Published.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'll confirm that. I'll confirm that maybe once before we close the. We'll
Okay.
go back up. Yeah.
The must who was brought from Bombay for a few days had a habit of smearing his entire body with ashes and slaked lime, and he was the first real must ever to be bathed by Baba. Punja was probably the most amiable and amusing of the men. He was a goofy yokel with retarded mental development, but he was splendid company and became the life of, and soul of the ashram. He was a native of Rahuri and was the first one to be brought to the ashram. By nature, he was blithe and sportive and given to hilarious laughter at the slightest provocation. He loved rhythm of music, sound, and body, and was seldom seen without a kerosene tin slung about his neck, which he would employ as a percussion instrument and tap out a sequence of sounds to whose accompaniment he would fling himself into exotic dances. He so loved his improvised drum that any minor lapse on his part would be corrected by a threat to confiscate it. After the ashram was disbanded, Punja was sent back to Rahuri, and he always kept his tin with him and would dance and shout Baba's name. He suffered a premature death in the Great Rahuri flood. On 18th November 1946, a sudden ferocious storm caused the river to burst its banks and move more than probably a move or more than half the town of Rovori was utterly destroyed. After the flood subsided, Punja was found dead in a sitting position in the open marketplace. Closing his nostrils with his right hand. Perhaps he has been playing with the rising waters, and when the level touched his nose, he must have closed his nostrils to prevent the water going up his nose. He made apparently no attempt to save himself, but sat down with his back against a stone platform, so that eventually the water rose about 15 feet over his head. One of Bapa's
Okay, we'll
disciples.
stop here. We'll just see the photographs and the captions and
Yes.
go and see when it was published, the book. So going back to the photographs, Fakir Bua at Rahuri. The screen at the back is made of tatya, which is basically matted grass. This is sunlight and shadow at Rahuri. Baba is there in the middle. Plays with Punja. Punja is the funny guy, the half-wit. Note the kerosene tin on Punja's lap. Oh, it's the big one. I was imagining it to be a smaller one, which was handier to handle as a drum, but obviously it's a big one. More faces at Rahuri. The one with the tousled hair is Arjun, another of the genuine musts at Rahuri. Some more faces at Rahuri. The second man from the left, is with the shaven head and deep set eyes looking at the camera is Lal Saheb. The smiling man center back with a blanket over his head is Dagru Bua. These are the four that we are going to see details about. Lal Saheb, Dagru Bua, and these two men who were two of the genuine musts of the Rahuri ashram. The man on the extreme left with hand to cheek, looking at the camera, is Ramzan. Ramzan is also a name of the must. With that, before we end, let's mark out where we are so that we don't forget. So, and let's go to the first page. See when this is published. So he's already talking of 1946. So it must be after 1946, right? So after you encountered Nasik now, yeah, it's 1948 and was published originally by R.D.K. Irani for Meher Publications in 1948. So the Nashik ashram was alive and kicking at that time from a timelines perspective. Okay, so any closing remarks before we continue?
There is a replica of the Meher Baba's shrine, just like Meherabad in Nasik.
Yes, have you been there?
Yes, yes, I have been there.
Oh, nice. Very
Yeah, and
good.
there is one in Jabalpur also,
Yes.
near
Oh, okay.
Jabalpur. Yeah. Which was done long back. This was done by Mr. Patil of Nasik, who was
Okay.
a businessman and came into Baba's contact. And it was done recently in 90s, I suppose. He got it made in Nasik. But the one near Jabalpur, I think near Sagar or some such place, that's
Okay.
very old actually. That's
Okay.
at the time of Baba only it was done.
Okay.
That
I've
has
seen
been
photographs.
recently
Yeah.
recently Baba lovers have contributed and made it proper place.
Restored it. Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah, restored it.
Very good. Great. So we'll continue from this point on tomorrow and
Yeah.
look forward to seeing you all. Have a good Saturday and talk to you tomorrow.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, everyone.
Your Trello
Avtar
board
hai.
is so convenient in the mobile to just click on and then hear what I want to hear.
What is that?
Yes, yes.
I didn't hear what you said. You were saying something about the mobile.
No, the Trello board, whatever you have created, the